Good night, everyone. I hope you had a peaceful day, and now it's time to relax. A little moment just for yourself. As you lie down in bed, let your eyes slowly close and your body unwind. We are right here with you, ready to take you on another gentle journey through the night. Welcome to Stories for Sleep. The first time I heard the lullaby, it came from the baby monitor. I don't have a child. It was around midnight. I was reading in bed when the soft static from the baby monitor, left over from the house's previous owners, suddenly cleared. And then a song, a soft voice, humming something sweet and old. It wasn't English. It was in a language I couldn't understand. But it felt familiar, like something I had once heard in a dream. I walked to the monitor, unplugged it, and tossed it into the storage closet. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next night, the lullaby came again. This time, not through the monitor. It was inside the walls. The same gentle voice, soft, slow. But I could feel the cold with it. The kind of cold that doesn't come from open windows or broken heaters. It came from somewhere else. I stood in the hallway and listened, and I swear I heard someone crying. At first I thought it was a child, but the crying was too deep, too hollow, like a sound made in an empty space. I moved out of the hallway, slept with the lights on. I didn't sleep well. A few days later, I had a friend over, Maya. She noticed something strange right away. "Your house feels heavy," she said, "like something's watching from the corners." I laughed nervously. "You sound like my grandma." But that night, as she was brushing her teeth in the guest bathroom, she froze. "Did you just turn on music upstairs?" she asked. "No," I replied. We stood quietly. The song began again, only this time it was clearer. A woman humming softly, like she was singing to a baby. And underneath it, crying. Not just one voice, but many. We searched the house, found nothing. But the next morning, the mirror in the guest room had fogged words. "She sings for the lost." I started researching the house. It was built in 1890, renovated in 1984. Records were limited. No deaths, no major crimes. But a local historian said something that chilled me. That house used to belong to a midwife named Elise Moran. She was known for comforting restless spirits. People claimed her lullaby could calm even the most violent ghosts. Some say she didn't just sing to babies, she sang to the dead. That night I stayed up with a recorder. At 12:03 a.m., the lullaby came again. This time, I hit record. When I played it back, it didn't just capture her voice. It recorded other voices too, wailing, weeping. One voice close to the mic whispered, "She makes us remember." Maya never came back. She said the crying followed her home, and 3 days later she sent me a voice note at 1:17 a.m. It was the lullaby, playing from inside her closet. She moved out of town. The next day I began hearing the song earlier now, sometimes around 10 p.m., and sometimes I heard it outside the house. Once I saw a figure under the streetlight, just standing, not moving, as the lullaby drifted through the air, and down her cheek, I swear, was a single tear. Even ghosts, it seems, can cry. I set up a camera in the hallway, pointed it toward the attic door. At 12:03 a.m., it triggered. I reviewed the footage the next morning. What I saw made my chest tighten. A woman in a long black dress walked out of the attic door. Slowly, she walked down the hallway, paused by my bedroom door, and began to sing. Her face was never shown, but her voice, clear and beautiful, wrapped the house in sadness. And as she turned to leave, the walls around her began to weep. Water stains formed, like wet tears. Now, the lullaby follows me wherever I go. I've heard it in my office, in a taxi, even on a flight once, when I dozed off and woke up crying. I don't know if Elise is a ghost or something older, but I've learned one thing. Her lullaby doesn't bring peace. It brings memory. It makes the dead remember what they lost, and in return, they weep. Last night, I found something new. A note on my kitchen table, written in beautiful cursive. Thank you for listening. They forgot me until you moved in. Now they remember. Now they mourn. And below it, a lullaby, written in a forgotten language. But somehow, I could read every word. And worse, I could hum it. Now, I'm scared. Because sometimes I catch myself singing it in my sleep. And the walls aren't just crying anymore. They're whispering. If you ever hear a woman humming at midnight, don't listen, don't hum along, and never, ever cry. Because once she knows your sorrow, she will never stop singing. It started with the smell, a bitter, burnt smell, like something rotting on hot metal. I would wake up choking on it, my throat dry, my chest tight. But when I got up and searched the house, nothing. No fire, no gas leak, nothing burning. And yet, the smell would be thick in the air at 3:33 a.m. every night. I thought it was in my head, maybe mold in the walls, I told myself. But then came the scratching, soft but constant, from inside the walls, behind the headboard, beneath the floorboards, under the sink, like nails dragging across old wood or claws. I started sleeping with headphones in, white noise, soft music, anything to drown it out. But one night, I woke up at 3:33 a.m. with the headphones on the floor, and that smell even stronger. And this time, I heard whispers, not words, not in English, but chanting, low, breathy, ancient. The next day, I told my coworker, Kendra. She listened carefully and said quietly, "You should burn sage." For what? To keep them away. She didn't laugh, didn't blink. That night I lit sage. The smell was sharp and clean. It filled the house. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. No smells, no scratching, no whispers. But the peace lasted only one night, because the next evening I forgot. I came home late, exhausted, went straight to bed, and at 3:33 a.m., I woke up to shadows on the ceiling. Not mine, long-fingered, crawling like smoke. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. All I could do was stare as the shadows reached down toward me. Then, just as I felt something cold brush my cheek, the hallway lights snapped on, and they vanished. Since then, I never forget to burn sage, every single night. It has to be before midnight, and I must walk the full circle of the house, windows, corners, closets, especially the closets, because once I skipped the closet and found the door open the next morning. Inside, footprints, burned black into the carpet. I started researching. There were old legends, stories of night feeders, spirits that slipped between worlds at mirror time. 3:33 a.m. They're attracted to grief, loneliness, and silence. They don't take you right away. They make you afraid, weaken you, and then feed. I moved houses, different city. I didn't light sage the first night, thinking maybe it was tied to the old house. That night I woke up with ashes on my pillow, and the smell, worse than ever. I burn sage now like it's medicine. I order it in bulk. I keep bundles in every room. I even carry a small stick in my car and backpack. If I forget, even once, they remind me. Sometimes with whispers, sometimes with a glimpse in the mirror, something standing behind me. Once I saw a long, bony hand reach from under my bed and pull my phone under. It was never found again. Last week, I found a message written in soot on my window. "You skipped the garage." I checked. The garage was ice cold, and in the middle of the floor, burned into the concrete, a black circle. Inside it, a single word: soon. I sleep less now. I light more sage, but I know it's only delaying things, because last night, even with the sage burning strong, I heard the voice. Not a whisper this time. A woman's voice. Calm, kind. You've kept us away long enough, but we're patient. If you ever feel a strange cold at 3:33 a.m., if your walls begin to scratch, or your mirrors fog without reason, don't wait. Burn the sage every night, without fail. Because once they slip through completely, no amount of smoke will save you. The first one appeared on a Tuesday. I had just moved into the apartment 2 weeks earlier, a quiet, top-floor unit in an old brick building on the edge of town. It was cheap, a little too cheap, but I didn't ask questions. I needed a fresh start, a new place, a new life. But that morning, when I opened my eyes, there was something different. Something drawn on the wall across from my bed, a symbol. It was in dark red, almost brown, a triangle with a circle inside it. Lines branching off the corners, uneven, jagged. I thought it was a prank. I lived alone. No friends had keys. The door was locked, windows shut. Still, I scrubbed it off, painted over it, tried to forget. The next night I woke up around 3:08 a.m., sweating. Something felt wrong. The air was heavier, like it had been pulled through a wet cloth. I turned on the light. A second symbol was on the wall, right above my headboard. This one was more complex. It looked like a star with eyes drawn into each point. Again, in that same red-brown, and underneath it, in shaky handwriting, "You are the vessel." I left, went to a motel, slept with the lights on. The next day, I brought a friend, Jason, with me to check the apartment. He laughed at first, until he saw the symbols. His face went pale. "This looks like ritual work, like real occult stuff." He took pictures, said he'd show them to someone who knew more. Meanwhile, I cleaned again, burned sage, hung up crosses, left lights on in every room. Still that night, I woke up at 3:08 a.m. again, and the walls, covered, symbols, circles, stars, arrows pointing inward, and writing in that same dried blood color. "He comes when the circle completes." I backed into a corner shaking. My phone wouldn't turn on. The lights flickered, and in the silence, I heard footsteps above me. But I lived on the top floor. Jason called the next morning. He sounded nervous. I showed the pictures to my cousin. He studies symbology. He said these aren't just random symbols. They're part of a calling ritual. One that's supposed to invite something old. If the final mark is drawn, it opens a door. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, sitting in the middle of the living room with every light on, candles burning, and salt at the door. It didn't help. At exactly 3:08 a.m., the air went cold. The candles blew out, and something began scratching behind the walls. It moved fast, room to room. I stood up, heart pounding, and then I saw it. The final symbol was forming on the wall, right in front of me, not drawn by hand, burning itself into the paint. I ran, sprinted into the stairwell barefoot, screaming. No one answered. The building was quiet, too quiet. Outside, everything felt warped, like I was inside a snow globe, and someone had started shaking it. I stayed out till sunrise. When I returned, the symbols were gone. Clean walls, no marks, no proof, only a message on my bathroom mirror. The vessel ran. "We will try again." I moved. Again. Left everything behind. Got a new phone, new number, new job. But last week, I woke up in my new apartment. One symbol, drawn in dust this time, same triangle and circle, and written beneath it, "We remember your walls. Now, I check the clock every night. I burn sage. I salt the doors, because I know they're waiting. For me to sleep, for the circle to be finished, for the door to open again. And next time, they might not let me wake up. It started with the nightmares, not ordinary ones, not the kind you shake off after breakfast. These dreams stayed with me, clinging to my skin like damp clothes. They smelled like earth and smoke, and always ended the same way, with something crawling toward me. At first, I laughed it off. Stress, I thought, lack of sleep, late night snacks. But on the fourth night, I woke up screaming. My sheets were on the floor, my room freezing cold, and my bedroom mirror was fogged over with a strange phrase scratched into it. 3 candles, 3 prayers, every night. That same day, I found an envelope under my door. No name. Inside was a folded paper, handwritten in neat script. If it's found you in sleep, it's already watching. You must perform the ritual before midnight. Light 3 white candles. Speak 3 true prayers from the heart. Do not lie during the prayer. It listens. Do this every night, or it will slip into your dreams and stay. I thought someone was playing a trick, until I turned the note over and saw a drawing of the thing from my dreams. Long arms, hollow eyes, a mouth too wide for its face. Exactly what had been chasing me in the dark. I bought candles that night, white, unscented, cheap, from a grocery store. At 11:50 p.m. I lit them. I didn't know what kind of prayer I was supposed to say, so I just spoke from the heart. Please, protect me. Please don't let it in. Please keep my dreams safe. I didn't even believe in that kind of thing. But when I finished, the room felt warmer, the silence softer. That night, for the first time in a week, I slept in peace. It worked. Every night after, I did the same thing. Light the candles, say the prayers, go to sleep. No nightmares, no shadows, nothing chasing me. But on the 7th night, I was tired, too tired. I fell asleep before the ritual, and that was the night I saw it fully. It didn't crawl this time. It stood, tall, almost touching the ceiling. No face, just a hole where the head should have been. It opened its arms, and I was dragged across the dream toward it. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. And just before it touched me, I woke up with blood on my pillow, from my nose, my ears, my lip, and all 3 candles were knocked over, one broken in half. The next night I did the ritual twice. I added salt, a cross, even incense. But in the dream, it was closer. It doesn't need to break in all at once. It sips your sleep like a drink. And every time you skip a step, it takes more. I asked around. An old man who runs the antique store near my building knew the tale. He called it the sleeper's warden. It waits for people who open the wrong door in their minds, he said. Not everyone dreams deep enough to find it, but when you do, it marks you. He told me 3 rules: light, word, truth. Break one, and it feeds. When the prayers are fake, it knows. And when the candles are blackened, it's already halfway through. The 10th night, 1 candle didn't light. The wick was soaked with what smelled like blood. Now I carry 3 candles with me when I travel. I pray in every hotel room, even in bathrooms, because if I don't, I hear it breathing. And worse, sometimes it speaks back, in my own voice, repeating my prayers, but twisting them. Please don't protect me. Please let it in. I've tried to break the pattern. Once I slept during the day, no help. It came anyway. Once I slept at a friend's place. Didn't matter. It whispered through the floor. The candles are yours. The prayers are yours. The door is yours. I only walk through it. I don't know how long I can keep this up. I've forgotten what real rest feels like. My candles are burning shorter each night, and sometimes I forget what I prayed the night before. Sometimes I lie, just a little. Sometimes I want to sleep without fear, but I can't, because the moment I do, it finishes the prayer for me. And then it will come, not just in dreams, but through the wall into the waking world. It was supposed to be fun, just a quiet evening at home, with flashlights, blankets, and silly shapes on the wall. My niece Ava was visiting for the weekend and we were bored, so I turned off the lights, held a flashlight under my chin, and said, "Let's make shadow puppets." She giggled and clapped. I made the classic rabbit. She made a snake. For the next hour we laughed, made silly voices, and turned the living room wall into a puppet stage. And then Ava made a shape I'd never seen before. A person. A tall, thin figure with long fingers and no face. I asked, "What's that one?" She didn't laugh this time. "He watches," she whispered. I turned the lights back on, joked that it was getting spooky. Ava didn't respond. That night I tucked her in and asked again, "What did you mean earlier about the shadow?" She looked at me seriously and said something I'll never forget. "He comes when you copy his shape. He thinks it's an invitation." I didn't sleep well that night. Kept thinking about how detailed her shape was, how exact. No way a kid her age could make something so precise. And when I replayed the moment in my head, I realized she hadn't been using her hands, just her body and the angle of the light, like someone had shown her exactly how to do it. At 3:13 a.m., I woke up to the hallway light flickering. I thought Ava had gotten up. I stepped into the hallway and saw the shadow puppet on the wall. The same figure, but no one was in front of the light. The shadow stood on the far wall, unmoving, long arms, no face, but it turned its head toward me, even though there was no body casting it. I flipped the switch. The shadow vanished. The light didn't flicker again. When I checked Ava's room, she was fast asleep, but the flashlight she'd used was still on, pointed at the ceiling. And on the ceiling, the same shadow. I told myself it was stress, imagination. But the next morning, Ava said, "He liked the show. He wants more." I asked who he was. She just looked at the wall and said, "Don't make the shapes again. He gets closer when you do." I tried to ignore it, told her no more shadow puppets, moved the flashlight out of reach. But that night, around 2:30 a.m., I heard clapping in the living room, like applause, soft, slow clapping. When I got there, no one was inside, just the flashlight, turned on again, pointed at the wall, and the shadow was bowing. I turned on all the lights, slept with Ava in my room. But over the next few nights, things got worse. Objects moved. Dark smudges began appearing on the walls, like soot or ash in the shape of hands. Ava started waking up with bruises, and every morning, more shadows were on the wall. Different ones now. A crowd, watching. I brought in help. A woman named Maria, who knew about symbols and old things. When she stepped inside, she froze. "You opened something," she said. "Something old." I explained the puppets, the shadow, the clapping. She walked to the living room wall, ran her hand over the spot where the figure had appeared, and whispered, "This wall is now a stage, and the show has begun." She lit sage, chanted things I didn't understand. Ava watched quietly. Then Maria turned and said, "The figure Ava made is called a watcher. They don't have faces because they wear the ones they're given. You mimicked its shape, so it thinks you gave it permission." She said we had to uninvite it. At 3:13 a.m. that night, the time it first appeared, we would perform a counter ritual. Create a new puppet using only light, no hands, name it something meaningless. Turn the light off before the figure appears. It was risky, but we had no choice. We did it. I used my phone flashlight, bent it through a wine glass, and shaped a tiny, silly shadow. Ava named it Zibbo. We said together, Zibbo lives here now, no more shows. And we turned the light off. Silence. Then, from the far end of the wall, I heard a hiss like anger. And then, the scratching began, but it didn't come in. It just circled the room and faded. Since then, the shadows are gone. The walls are clean. No more clapping. No more bruises. Ava sleeps peacefully, but we don't use flashlights at night anymore. And we never, ever make shadow puppets. Because now I know, some shapes are not just shadows. They're calls, and something might just answer. I bought the music box from a small antique store downtown. It was tucked away on a dusty shelf, behind some porcelain dolls and broken clocks. Dark mahogany wood, tiny carved roses on the sides, and a winding key at the back. The tag simply said, 10, works. It felt odd when I picked it up, cold, even though the store was warm, like it didn't want to be touched. But I bought it anyway. Thought it might look nice on my bookshelf. That was my first mistake. The first time I played it, the melody was soft and old. Familiar, even though I'd never heard it before. A slow, waltz-like tune, gentle but haunting. The tiny ballerina inside spun slowly. I felt sleepy almost instantly. I didn't think much of it at first. Just a calming tune. But that night, I woke up standing in the hallway, barefoot, eyes wide open. The music box was still playing, though I hadn't wound it before bed. I stood there for a long time. My feet were cold. My skin felt wet, like I'd walked through water. I checked every door and window, locked. Then I checked the music box. It was warm to the touch, like it had been played recently. I went back to bed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, had been guiding me. Night after night it happened again, sleepwalking. Sometimes I woke up in the kitchen, sometimes at the front door, my hand on the knob. And always, the music box was open and playing. Even when I locked it shut, even when I removed the key, I stopped playing it, wrapped it in a towel, placed it in a box, stored it in the attic. I thought it was over. But the next night I woke up on the roof, barefoot, no memory of climbing. The music, I could hear it, muffled beneath me, coming from the attic. I tried to throw it away, took it to the dumpster 3 blocks away, watched the garbage truck pick it up. That night, I locked all doors, placed chairs under doorknobs, slept in the living room with lights on. Still, I woke up in my own bedroom, and on the nightstand, the music box. No scratches, no dirt, just spinning softly. The ballerina had changed. Her arms were no longer up. They were reaching out. I asked around. Found a man named Alan who owned the antique shop. He went pale when I described the box. "You bought that old thing?" he asked. "That came in from a house fire. Everything else burned, but not that box." The owner used to sleepwalk too. Said the music told her where to go. She walked into the lake. They found the box floating at the shore. I begged him to take it back. He refused. Said he'd never touch it again. So I went to a local historian. She said the tune matched a French lullaby from the 1800s, a song used to soothe children before sacrifice during an old pagan ritual. The melody was meant to entrance, to weaken will, to make the victim walk willingly to their fate. That night, I duct taped the box shut, wrapped it in chains, put it in a safe, locked it. Still, I woke up standing in front of the mirror, with the safe door wide open behind me, and the ballerina now spinning backwards. Her eyes were open. I'm exhausted now. I try to stay awake, drink coffee, chain myself to the bed. But the moment I blink too long, I hear it. That slow, old tune. And when I wake, I've moved again. Once to the edge of the woods, once to the train tracks, and last night, to the cemetery. If I don't perform the song, if I don't complete the walk, it gets louder. I think it's building to something, preparing me for a final performance. Because last night, the ballerina wasn't there. Instead, there was a figure, a tall one, made of shadow and ash, turning slowly in the box, with arms outstretched, waiting for me to finish the dance. If you ever find an old music box with a ballerina that feels too real, don't play it, don't wind it. And above all, don't fall asleep near it, because once it learns your rhythm, it will walk your body wherever it wants. And you may never wake up again. It started as a dream. At least, that's what I told myself. One night I was lying in bed, heavy with sleep, when I felt my body go numb. Not just tired, paralyzed. I tried to lift my arms, turn my head, move my fingers. Nothing. I couldn't even blink. And then, I rose. Not in a dream, not in imagination. I floated, upward, effortless, silent, weightless. And as I hovered closer to the ceiling, I looked down and saw myself lying in bed. At first, it was calm. My face looked peaceful, like I was simply asleep. I hovered there, confused, heart racing, but I had no heartbeat, no breathing, no sensation, just awareness. Then, slowly, I began to drift toward the far corner of the ceiling, where the shadows were darker, where something else was waiting. I snapped awake with a gasp, drenched in sweat, my heart thundering in my chest. I sat up and looked at the corner. Nothing there, but the air felt heavier, like someone had just left, or was still hiding. The next night, it happened again. Only this time, I didn't float right away. I felt a pull, like a hand inside my chest, lifting me by invisible strings. And as I floated up, I wasn't alone. Another shape rose beside me, a tall shadow, human-like, but blurry. It didn't have a face, but I knew it was watching me. It didn't look at the body in bed, it looked at me, and I felt it smile, not with lips, but with its presence. "Welcome back," it said, without speaking. Every night after that, I would wake up somewhere on the ceiling, looking down at myself. Sometimes I was alone, sometimes the shadow was there. Sometimes there were more. Shadows lining the walls, hanging just above my sleeping body, waiting, whispering. They didn't speak English or anything human, but somehow I understood. They were learning how to enter. I went to a doctor. Sleep paralysis, she said. Hallucinations, stress, but no pill, no therapy, no meditation stopped the floating or the watching. I started sleeping with the lights on. Didn't help. Started recording myself with a phone cam, and that's when I saw something I still can't explain. At exactly 2:57 a.m., the camera shook slightly. Then it showed my body twitching, as if something was climbing inside. At the same moment, a blur passed across the lens, like something moved in front of it, fast and tall. And then, my eyes opened, but I didn't blink, didn't move. Just stared at the ceiling for 5 full minutes, then laid back down. That wasn't me. Not fully. Not anymore. I began researching, found a name for what was happening. Astral projection. Some believe when we sleep deeply, our spirit or consciousness can separate from the body. Most return safely, but some are followed, some are noticed, and some are replaced. The shadow, whatever it was trying to fit, trying to wear me like a suit. Every night it got better. Every night I floated a little less, and it stayed a little longer. One night, I woke up on the ceiling and couldn't get back. I screamed silently, watched as my body, something inside it, stood up, walked to the mirror, smiled. A slow, cracked, unfamiliar smile, then turned and whispered, "Stay up there." And I fell back into the ceiling like water. Since then, things are different. People say I seem colder, less expressive. Even I feel off, like my reactions are half a second late. I look in mirrors, and I don't recognize my eyes. And at night, I wake up above, watching, helpless, screaming, while it lives my life. If you ever feel yourself floating in sleep, resist, fight. Because once you leave your body, something else might get in, and it might not want to get it back. I always loved visiting Grandma's house. It smelled like old books, warm bread, and lavender. Tucked at the edge of a quiet village, her cottage was surrounded by thick woods, peaceful, isolated, cozy. She had strange habits, sure, burning herbs in corners, whispering to jars, keeping mirrors covered after sundown. But she was kind, loving, gentle. And every night before bed, she gave me the same thing, her sleep potion. It was a thick, dark liquid in a small glass bottle. Smelled like honey and herbs, with a strange bitterness underneath. "Just a sip, my darling," she'd say. "It helps you sleep, keeps the bad ones away." As a child, I never questioned it. I drank it and slept without dreams. Years passed. I grew up, moved to the city. But after a bad breakup and losing my job, I needed a break. So I returned to Grandma's for a few weeks of rest. She hadn't changed. Still warm, still strange, still offering the same bottle every night. "You need it now more than ever," she said. "The woods listen when you're weak." I laughed it off, took a sip out of habit. That night I slept for 13 hours straight. No dreams, no waking, just heavy, blank nothing. And in the morning, I felt empty. Like something had pressed pause on my thoughts. On the fourth night, I didn't take it. I wanted to test myself, see if I could sleep on my own. I shouldn't have. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of scratching. Not outside, not on the windows, from under the bed. I froze, listened. Soft breathing, wet, close. And then I heard whispering. Too late, too late. Too late. I turned on the light. Nothing there. Ran to Grandma's room. She wasn't sleeping, just sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open. "You didn't drink it tonight," she said, voice low. They smelled that. I asked what she meant. She handed me the bottle. "Drink now, before they come all the way through." I drank. I slept. And again, no dreams. But in the morning, there were claw marks on the floorboards near my bed. I started watching her closely after that. Grandma had a locked cabinet near the stove. She always took the bottle from there. One afternoon, while she napped, I picked the lock. Inside were dozens of empty bottles, just like mine, some labeled with names I didn't recognize. Thomas, May, Ilya, Wren, and in the back, a jar full of dark, sticky black hair, human hair. That night, I pretended to drink the potion, poured it into a plant when she wasn't looking. I went to bed pretending to sleep, and I saw what she did. She came into my room at exactly 3 o'clock a.m., holding a small bowl of ashes and a feather. She placed both at the foot of the bed, then whispered something in a language I didn't understand, and the scratching stopped. The next morning I confronted her. She didn't deny it. The potion binds your spirit to your body, she said. If you sleep without it, they can pull you halfway through. Not demons, not ghosts, something older, from between the trees, from under the soil. I've kept them away all your life, with herbs, with words, with that potion. I asked what happened to the others, the names on the bottles. She looked out the window. Some refused to take it, said I was mad. They don't sleep anymore, or they sleep forever. That night, I debated what to do. I wanted to believe it was just a dream, just an old woman's folklore. But then I found something outside, on the porch, a tooth, still bloody, still warm, and carved into the wood of the door. No more potion, no more protection. I drank it, because I didn't want to know what came when I didn't. I didn't want to see what pulled hair from skulls, whispered from below. I'm back in the city now. I asked Grandma for the recipe. She refused, said it must be given, not made. And last night, my bottle ran out. I thought I'd be safe, far from the woods. I thought they only followed me there. But at 3 o'clock a.m., I woke to scratching from inside my closet. A soft voice said, "Your dreams are open again." And now I understand. Grandma's sleep potion wasn't natural. It was a bargain, a fragile wall between me and them. And without it, they're already inside. It started as a joke. My therapist suggested counting sheep to help with my insomnia. It's silly, but it works, he said. Just close your eyes and imagine them hopping over a fence, one by one. So I tried it. That night, I laid in bed, stared at the ceiling, and slowly whispered, 1, 2, 3. It worked. Before I reached 10, I felt drowsy, calm. The last number I remember saying was 9. I woke up feeling better than I had in months, well rested, peaceful. No strange dreams, no restlessness. So the next night, I did it again. 1, 2, 3. But when I got to 10, something changed. The sheep didn't jump like the others. It stopped at the fence, looked straight at me. And its eyes weren't normal. They were human. I blinked, tried to shake the image, started over. 1, 2, 3. When I got to 10 again, the same thing happened. That same sheep, same spot, staring right at me, unmoving, unblinking. This time, its mouth opened. It didn't make a sound, but I felt the words, "Don't count me." I woke with a jolt, my body frozen in sweat. I told myself it was just a dream, a trick of the mind. But when I checked the mirror in the bathroom, my eyes were bloodshot, as if I'd been staring into the dark all night. The next night, I avoided counting altogether, just tried to sleep, didn't work. I tossed, turned, saw shapes move in the corners of the room, felt something breathe on my neck. I couldn't take it, so I gave in and started counting again. 1, 2, 3. At 9, my limbs relaxed. At 10, the sheep turned its head again. This time, it opened its mouth wider. And this time, I heard it. "You were warned." I snapped awake to the sound of scratching at my window. 3 floors up. Nothing should be able to reach it. But there, through the curtain, I saw it. A shadow, shaped like a sheep, but with hands instead of hooves. Long fingers dragging across the glass. I went back to the therapist, told him everything. He leaned back in his chair and asked one question. How many times have you counted to 10? I hesitated. Maybe 5 nights. He nodded, slowly. Then it knows your name now. I blinked. What? You invited it. The 10th is not a sheep, never was. You opened a gate, and it stepped through. You weren't supposed to reach it. That's why people fall asleep before 10. I thought he was crazy, until I noticed the photos on his desk. One of them showed him as a young man, with eyes just like the sheep in my dream. Wide, round, familiar. That night, I tried a new method. I counted backward. 9, 8, 7. I never reached one. At 5, I passed out and woke up with hoof prints on my floor, burnt into the wood. Since then, I avoid sleep. But when I do give in, the sheep come. They jump over the fence, one by one. Same rhythm, same pace. But now, I recognize them. They wear faces of people I knew, some living, some long gone. And when the 10th comes, it speaks clearer now. Count again. Let me in again. Let me stay. Last week, I stopped counting completely, but I still see them. In reflections, in passing shadows, in dreams I don't remember, but wake up from screaming. And now, every clock in my house resets itself to 10:10, no matter what. I think the 10th is here. It's not asking anymore. It's waiting. So if someone ever tells you to count sheep before bed, go ahead. But please, never count more than 9. Because the 10th isn't dreaming. The 10th is watching. And once you count it too many times, it starts counting you. I used to laugh at dream catchers. The feathers, the beads, the circular web. Pretty decorations, I thought. Meant to hang above beds and catch bad dreams. My girlfriend Ellie, though, believed in them deeply. She was half Native American, raised with stories passed down from her grandmother. When she moved in with me, the first thing she hung above our bed was an old dream catcher from her family. It looked different from the ones in stores. No bright colors, just black threads, faded beads, and feathers that looked like they came from a bird long gone. "This one's real," Ellie whispered. "It's been used before." For a while, everything was fine. In fact, I slept better than ever. No nightmares, no restlessness. But Ellie, she started waking up tired, eyes red, voice hoarse, and sometimes she'd wake up screaming. One night, I asked what she was dreaming about. "It's not me dreaming," she said softly. "Something else is. The dream catcher doesn't just block nightmares. It traps the spirit causing them. And I think we've caught something too strong." I laughed it off, told her she was just stressed. She didn't argue. But that night I woke to shuffling sounds. And in the dark I saw the feathers on the dream catcher, moving on their own, even though the air was still. I stood up and turned on the light. Ellie sat up, eyes wide. "Don't touch it," she warned. "It's not done yet." The next few nights got stranger. I'd wake up with bruises on my arms. I'd dream of falling endlessly, being chased by shadows. Ellie began sleepwalking, muttering in a language I didn't recognize. The dream catcher, its threads were changing, tighter, darker, like they were weaving themselves anew. And one morning, I saw a small black figure hanging at the center, like a lump of ash. It hadn't been there before. I took it down. Ellie begged me not to. "You don't understand. It's holding something back." But I was scared. The dreams were getting worse. The shadows in them began speaking. And one night, I dreamed that I was standing in our bedroom, watching myself sleep, with something crawling down from the ceiling, heading for my chest. I burned the dream catcher in the backyard under the moon. It didn't burn easily. The feathers shriveled, the frame cracked. But the threads, they screamed. I swear, I heard a voice wail as they caught fire. High, sharp, almost human. Ellie fainted that night, and for a week, she didn't speak. When she finally did, she said, "You didn't free us. You freed it." The house changed after that. Lights flickered, mirrors cracked. The bedroom stayed cold, even in summer. And every night around 3:33 a.m., we'd hear footsteps in the hallway. But when we looked, nothing. Until the night we both woke up to singing. A low, sad lullaby, coming from inside the wall. Ellie wept quietly. "It's the spirit," she whispered. "It's looking for a new web, a new mind to nest in." We moved out, left everything behind. But I still dream of it. A black figure with bead-like eyes and feathers growing from its arms. It waits behind my eyelids. Each time I dream, the thread begins again, pulling me into its circle. And I think one night, I won't wake up. So, if you ever find a dream catcher that's old and faded, be careful. Ask who used it. Ask what they trapped. Because not every nightmare is just a dream. Sometimes, it's a prisoner. And all it wants is another chance to crawl free. It was a small thing, something you'd never notice unless you paid close attention. But I did, because it was my blanket, a thick, warm throw I'd owned for over a year, navy blue with a simple white grid pattern. I kept it at the end of my bed, folded neatly every night, until one morning, I woke up and saw it. The lines were different, curved, not grid, spiral. I stared at it for a long time, then blamed myself. Maybe I folded it wrong. Maybe I'd forgotten the design. But deep down I knew it had changed. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? "Hey, my blanket has a different pattern now." Even I thought I was going crazy. But the next night I paid attention. I studied the blanket before sleeping. Even took a photo. Navy, white grid, simple. Then I slept. And the next morning, the lines were zigzags. I checked the photo. Still a grid. Checked the blanket again. Still zigzags. Not printed. Woven. The threads had literally changed shape. That's when the dream started. Always the same. I'd be standing in a white room, holding the blanket like a cape. A voice behind me would whisper, "Fold it right, or it folds you." I'd wake up in sweat, tangled in the fabric, tighter each time. I tried throwing it away, stuffed it in a garbage bag, walked to the dumpster behind my apartment, left it, felt relieved. That night, I slept without dreams, for the first time in weeks, until I woke up at 3:17 a.m., cold, and saw it there, folded at the foot of my bed, like nothing had happened, except the pattern was now eyes, dozens of eyes. I called my mom, told her about the blanket. She hesitated, then said, "That blanket, you mean the one from your uncle's house?" "What uncle?" I asked. "You never met him. Lived alone, had issues. He believed his furniture moved at night, said things whispered from his sheets, died in his sleep. We found him, tangled in that same blanket." I felt sick. I burned it, poured lighter fluid all over it in the bathtub, watched the fabric catch fire, melt, disappear. Smoke filled the apartment. I opened every window. By sunrise, the smell was gone. So was the blanket. That night, I slept peacefully, until I turned in bed and heard a familiar crinkle, a soft, dry rustle, like fabric. I turned on the lamp. At the foot of my bed, a new blanket, same navy blue, but this time the pattern was just one word: again. I moved out, left the city, got rid of everything. New place, new furniture, Fresh start. I bought a new blanket, green with polka dots, cheap and cheerful. I don't even sleep with it on. I keep it folded in the closet, just in case. But lately, I've noticed it looks more blue than green. And last night, I swore the dots were starting to connect, like they're becoming lines. And I think I know what's coming next. If your blanket ever looks different in the morning, trust yourself. Don't touch it, don't fold it, and never sleep with it again. Because some patterns don't belong to us. They belong to something else. And it's learning your shape, one thread at a time. When I was 6 years old, my aunt gave me a stuffed rabbit. It was soft, white, with long ears and button eyes. I named it Buttons. Back then, it was my favorite thing in the world. I took it everywhere, to school, to sleepovers, even the hospital when I got pneumonia. Buttons was always there, watching quietly from the pillow. But something changed when I turned 16. I hadn't played with it in years. It had been sitting in a box in the attic. Then, one night, I had a dream about it. In the dream, I was a child again, holding Buttons. Only, it blinked. Slow, heavy blinks, like a person. "You forgot me," it whispered. I woke up confused, sweating. I hadn't thought about that toy in almost a decade. But when I went to the attic the next morning, out of curiosity, Buttons wasn't in the box. I found it sitting on my bed, exactly in the middle, upright, facing the door. I thought maybe my mom found it and thought it would be funny to surprise me. But when I asked her, she looked confused. "I didn't even know you still had that thing." I picked up Buttons. The fabric felt colder than I remembered. The button eyes had tiny cracks in them now. Still, I told myself it was just a coincidence. I placed it on a shelf and went on with my day. That night, I went to sleep with the lights off. But every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched. I turned the lamp on. Buttons was still on the shelf, sitting up, looking straight at me. I stared for a long time. And then, just for a moment, I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, Buttons' head had turned. Slightly. Barely noticeable. But now it faced my pillow. I laughed nervously. Probably just imagined it. Maybe I bumped the shelf earlier. I got out of bed, picked it up, and this time, put it in the closet, closed the door, went to sleep. And I dreamed again. This time, I was walking through a hallway. The walls were soft, fuzzy, like fabric. And at the end of the hallway was Buttons, sitting in a chair. Its mouth opened slowly. "Close your eyes again. I like the dark." I woke up and gasped. The closet door was open, and Buttons was back, on the shelf, sitting closer to the edge. I started testing it. During the day, I'd set up my phone and record the shelf. Hours of footage. Nothing moved. But at night, I started waking up in different positions, once with Buttons in my hands. Another time it was on my chest, once. I found myself standing in the corner of the room, staring at the bed. I talked to my therapist. She suggested trauma, old memories, sleepwalking. I didn't tell her about the blinking, not yet, because part of me still hoped it wasn't real. Then one night I left the lights on, sat on my bed, stared at Buttons, didn't blink. For 15 minutes I kept my eyes open, burning, dry, and just When I couldn't hold them open any longer, I blinked. And in that exact second, Buttons blinked too. A slow, sticky blink. Its eyelids weren't made of fabric. They looked wet. I screamed, grabbed the rabbit, threw it in the fireplace, set it on fire. The flames licked the cloth fast. But before it burned, I swear it squealed, high-pitched, like a child in pain. The next day, I thought it was over, until I got a package on my doorstep. No return address. I opened the box. Inside was a new stuffed rabbit, white, soft, with perfect, uncracked button eyes. Now it's sitting on my desk. No matter where I put it, it returns to the same spot, middle of the bed, facing the door, waiting. Every night, I try not to look at it. I cover it with blankets, bags, anything. But sometimes in the dark, I hear tiny blinks, wet sounds, like something trying to pretend to be still. I haven't slept in 3 nights, because now, it doesn't wait for me to blink. It waits for me to dream. And in those dreams, it walks. If you ever find your old toys, and they show up in places they shouldn't, don't bring them back into your room. And whatever you do, don't blink.